You do not like me anymore after people come to this training, so just give you fair warning. How many of you in here have teenagers? Okay, so y'all buckle in, okay, because there's so much happening online that people do not know. We're going to deep dive into that. So let me, first of all, okay. So I am Dr. Dina Graves. I'm the President and Director of Inspiration Transformation. Our tagline is we design hope, because what we have seen in our children who have been abused and neglected, the hope and the light and the purpose has been stolen from them. And so we design curriculums to bring that back to them. And what we're doing with this curriculum is there are predators out there online who are trying to steal our youth identity and purpose and all those things. And so we're trying to make people aware of that. We do a youth version of this. I just did this for the youth at Dunsmere High School on Friday, and they were stunned. They were like, we had no idea. They actually stayed and talked to us for 30 minutes into their lunch period. So that tells you how engaged they were with it. All right, so let me tell you that I'm going to be very real with you today, because this is ending in things like child sex trafficking, sextortion, bullying, all kinds of different things like that are happening to our youth because of what is happening online. So I'm going to be very, very real with you today. Make sure you take care of yourself. You need to step outside, whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. This is a slinky. When I'm from Texas, and when I'm in Texas and I'm not having to fly, I have toys out on the tables for everyone. But this actually happened in California. So a social worker did that to one of my slinkies. Now, you know how many stories that they hear, so that tells you, you know, how deep we're going to go into the information. So just one more warning, trigger warning, take care of yourself, and just be prepared for me to be real. Because there is a tremendous number of youth and children doing things online that is unintentionally putting them in danger. And what they don't realize, and what even we as adults don't realize, is that we leave behind a digital footprint. And predators and others are able to use that digital footprint to prey upon our children. And so I want to start off by playing like a little pop quiz, right? Because this is put on by the Department of Education, so a pop quiz is appropriate. So we're going to play, Are You Smarter? How many of you remember, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? All right. Are you smarter than an online student? So, how many of you think you're smarter than an online student? Anybody? Probably not. All right, well, let's see. So let's jump into it. Pop quiz time. I'm going to give you some acronyms and one word that our youth use to hide from us what they're doing online. So they talk to each other in code, right? So I want to show, and by the way, the predators talk to them in code too. So I'm going to give you some acronyms, and let's see if you can guess what these acronyms are. And I actually have some prizes that we're going to get out. Let me find them real quick. These are little brains, squishy ball brains. So anyone who guesses it, it's a brain. Remember that I was saying if I only had a brain? Well, I've got a brain for you if you need one. All right, so here we go. KPC. What does KPC stand for? Anyone want to guess? All right, we only have 3 hours, so we'll go for it. KPC stands for Keep Parents Clueless. Ready? Here we go. Next one. SVB. Perhaps at least guess.
Come on, Robin, maybe we all
SVB. Okay, that stands for self-harming behavior. Right, here we go. They only get better. Next one, WTPA.
Where are the parents at?
Close. Where's what?
Where's the party?
Where's the party at? There we go. All right, good job. Thinking like a teenager. Here we go. DOC. Oh, good job. Good. Oh, so, well, I'm not a good thrower, but she's a good catcher. All right, here we go. Next one is broken. This one's not an acronym, it's an actual word. So broken. Someone guess this? No, but there is a lot of that.
Under the influence?
What?
Under the influence?
That is actually close enough. So it is hungover from alcohol. So who said that? You can't be that far back.
Really hard.
Oh, there we go. All right. So when I do this with the kids, they're like, no. Okay, here we go. Next one, GNOC. You're doing really good. So make a guess. You cannot guess that there's no way I can go that far. Okay. So you're saying all my teenagers are smarter?
Oh, definitely, by far.
All right, time's up. We need guesses. Good guess. Good try. Get naked on camera. Oh. Okay. We're about to get even better. Here we go. DTF. So who do you want this one to go to?
The ones that bring.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible. I'm sorry. Okay, so Strata. All right, I think I have one more. KMS. Yeah. So you have one, right?
I already have one, yeah.
Okay, so someone just, this is what it'd be like when you're in the ballpark and they hit the ball. Okay, never mind. I'm assuming zero me. Okay, so that's the way our youth are talking to each other and to predators. And I want to give you an example. When I say are you smarter than an online teen, it actually goes way down younger than that. This little boy is a little bit hard to understand because he talks really fast, but I want you to hear what he says, and then I'll talk about it a little bit afterwards. So listen closely.
Hey guys, today I'm about to have yeah, with a passcode. So as you see here, it has a passcode. So first one, like PCB, John Cena. Just search any favorite wrestlers, and it'll pop up this way, as you see. Then as you see here says, take your name, something like that. You can press any of them. I'll press turn down the John Cena theme song. And this is what it'll come, as you see. And then you can press, as you see, it says C for article. Press it, bam. It goes straight to Wikipedia. But if you're not interested, you can just quit it out, bam, you're straight into the iPad. So, yeah, I really think it's a good way to have a whole time.
So how old do you think that child is? Maybe 10, maybe 9, 8. And I don't know how well you can hear him, but he is saying, you know, my mom, she changed the password on me. Is that going to stop me? No, I'm going to figure out how to hack into her iPad. And he does it within a minute, right? Now, I will tell you, he's using an older iPad right there, and they have with the thumbprint, he would not be able to do that. But do you think he would be able to figure out another way to get into it? Exactly, right? And even with that iPad, if he can hack into his mom's account, he can get access to anything he wants to from her new one on that, right? So young kids figuring out how to do this stuff. We are way past the days of stranger danger where we had to worry about someone sitting in their car and trying to lure our kids to them with candy, that kind of thing. Now these people can come right into our children's bedrooms, right into their bathrooms, right into their classrooms. Anywhere they are 24/7, predators have easy access to them. And I'll tell you, it's kind of like, do you remember the old, I think actually still go on, the cage hunts where people pay a lot of money and they go inside a big fenced-in property and they hunt down the animals? That's kind of what it's like for our kids online, because they're living in this virtual world and these predators have such easy access to them. And I'm going to show you deeper and deeper how they do have access to them. So I don't know if you can see that. I'm not sure why it's so dark, but that's a cell phone inside of the trap. And that just really illustrates that these people are just so easily able to lay trick traps and webs for our children to get them caught into. What has happened to our children is they live in this virtual world, and the virtual world has become so normalized for them that they have a hard time separating reality from what's happening in the virtual world. Now, I have done like foster parents, resource parents, roundtables, and they told me things like, you know, I have one kid that just talks all the time about suicide, but talks about it like a video game. Like I can kill myself, and then I'm going to come back to life, because that's how it works in the video game, right? So, normalized world for our kids online. Now, when the pandemic broke out, the shutdowns happened within no time, minutes. Predators are on the dark web. Their conversation starts jumping, escalating about how can we use the pandemic to prey upon more kids. You know, they're not going to be able to go to their prom. They're not going to be able to play their state championship games. They're not going to be able to go to birthday parties and graduations. How can we take advantage of that? And they were pretty darn successful, because in 2020, the National Center for Missing Exploited Children runs the cyber tip line, and they had a record-breaking year, almost 22 million cases of online solicitation reported to them. Well, so it was a record-breaking year just overall for how many reports they got, but for the online specifically part, you can see almost 100% increase in a 1 year period. So these predators on the dark web and in other areas fully used it to their advantage. And everyone in this room, I'm sure, understands the mental health consequences of what happened to our youth with the shutdown. They were able to prey upon that as well. On average, it takes 18 minutes from the time a predator meets a child online, a teenager online, to talk them into meeting them in person. Now, they may not immediately go meet them, but they've talked them into it on average within 18 minutes. They're making plans, right? Almost 90% of sexual solicitations of our children are made via instant messaging or in chat rooms. I want to show you what our teenagers are saying about that. 86% of girls in one study claim that they can conduct an online chat without their parents, foster parents knowing about it. 54% say they can conduct a cyber relationship without their parents knowing about it. We've gotten to the point where kids are so connected to their technology that we've even had to come up with words to describe it. And so when you have words like vamping, that comes from vampire, and it means that our kids are even going to bed with their devices, and that makes it easier for these predators to talk to them 24/7. round the clock, all hours of the night. They're actually not even getting enough sleep now because they're so addicted to their technology. So first recommendation I have for you is do not let them take their devices to bed with them. You will get some handouts at the end of today. They have a lot of these recommendations and how they're doing things on there for you. I will tell you, if you make the decision not to let them take their devices to bed, that blue light actually tricks your brain into thinking it's time to get up instead of time to go to bed. So you would want to take it away from them about an hour before bedtime if one of your concerns is they're not getting enough sleep. Okay, so any questions on that before we jump into some of the most popular social media? Everyone good? Right, so I want to just talk to you about a few of the most popular social media apps. From there, I'll show you some of the ways that our teenagers are hiding things from us online, how to find them, and then later today we'll go into the very specific dangers that puts them in, like I mentioned earlier, child sex trafficking, sextortion, cyberbullying, all those kind of things. So let's talk first about TikTok. Anyone in here ever heard of TikTok? Anyone in here at TikTok? Come on, there's some interesting things about yourself too. Here we go. So TikTok is not the most popular social media app, but one of these, right up at the top. It has been downloaded almost 3 billion times. And TikTok has a very controversial history. So first of all, it was hit by our Federal Trade Commission with the largest ever fine for collecting private data on our children. So they were collecting their email addresses, their locations, their friends list, all kinds of personal information, very young children. So they get hit with this largest ever fine, and then just a short time later, they get hit with a lawsuit from parents. So they settle that fine, and they get hit with this lawsuit, and they immediately settle it. And that tells you something, right? Like they don't wait, they don't negotiate, they don't go to court, anything. They settle it for $1.1 billion. And then just a few months later, they get hit with more lawsuits, this time 20 separate lawsuits. And in this one, they were accused of taking those, you know, the facial filters, like the little cat faces and those kind of things. So they were accused of collecting our children's facial characteristics or the biometric data through those facial features, okay, those little things. They also were accused of collecting their precise indoor location. And by the way, if they're collecting that on our children, do you think they're collecting it on you? Right? So if you're using TikTok, keep all these things in mind for yourself as well. So right now, if you pulled it out, they can know the exact room that you're setting in. Okay? Then religious and political views, sexual orientation, this is all that they're collecting, mental and physical health information, and all those kind of things that are used for surveillance, identity theft, all that. Not alone in that, Facebook then gets hit with a lawsuit for collecting facial recognition on our children. And again, we're talking about very young children. Shortly after that, the federal government and 48 attorneys general launched an investigation against 9 social media giants. Now, let me ask you a question. In this political environment that we're in, if we can get 48 attorneys general to agree on anything, do you think there's something very good there, right? So that tells you something about the kind of danger that they're putting our children in. And one of the things they have been accused of, TikTok is owned by a company in China, and they're taking this data that they collect on our children, and it goes on servers and is stored in China, and the Chinese government has access to it. So you have to ask yourself, do you want your children's data, their email address, their location, their facial characteristics, all those things, going to another country? But you do not really have to worry about it because see attorneys for TikTok said, you know what? Don't worry about that. It's okay. It's not against the law. So it's okay if they send your children's data to servers in another country. And by the way, as that data is being sent across the ocean, it's unencrypted, which means hackers have pretty easy access into it as well. TikTok's also been accused of this. I don't know if you can see the date on that, but it's just about a month ago of just feeding our kids a constant stream of sexual violence, drugs, all that kind of material, just constantly to their feeds. They've also been accused of very dark and dangerous algorithms, like purposely programming TikTok to send things to our kids that are dangerous. This one is really huge because this one's been proven that they will get a complaint that a predator has posted something on a child's video, and they'll remove that comment, but they don't remove the predator from the platform. So then they're just free to go find another child to play it on. And that's happened multiple times. And they are, of course, very kid-friendly, kid-safe, and you can kind of tell that, right, from these photos, that they're allowed to be posted on there. Very young kids who are younger than they're supposed to be to even have access to it. But 40% of kids have said they've lied about their age and to be able to get onto social media. Bigger than that, 6 in 10 parents allow their children to lie about their age so that they can get on social media. And the majority of those do not have any kind of parental controls to make sure these kind of things are not happening to their kids. So one of the things that TikTok also has been accused of is making it purposely addictive. Now, for those of you who have TikTok, when it opens up, what immediately starts happening? Right, the videos just automatically start playing, right? And what does that do to you? Makes you want to watch the next one, right? But not to worry, I just saw last night, in fact, that now they're going to make you pause for 5 seconds if you watch too many videos in a row. So that's going to break your addiction if you take that 5-second pause, right? Because then you're not going to be curious about the next video, especially our kids, right? All right. Now, I will tell you, one of my biggest concerns with TikTok is this one. And I have a lot of concerns about TikTok, but this is the biggest. When they came out, and for years, this just changed, just like again within the last couple of months. If you downloaded the TikTok app and you opened up an account, you could not delete your account. You had to email TikTok and ask their permission to delete your account. Does that tell you something? They just recently changed that, but do you think that means they're deleting all that information they collected on the servers? Probably not, but we might guess, right? Right now, a lot of things that happen on social media are very dangerous for our kids without predators being involved, and one of those are viral challenges. Have any of you in here heard of some of these, like the Benadryl challenge, the blackout challenge, where they were strangling themselves, and kids actually dying from that? Our children are watching these influencers online on these social media apps, and they want to be like them, and so they'll do whatever it takes to get people to follow them, to build an audience, people to pay them, all that kind of stuff. And they're actually dying as a result of that. This child hangs himself in response to the blackout challenge. His sister walks outside and finds him hanging in the tree again. How dangerous this thing is for our kids. All right, and then we have challenges like this one.
Pee your pants challenge.
So kids all over the world stood in front of their phone, peed their pants, and posted it online for all the world to see. To get what? Likes and followers. Okay, so these kind of things are happening every day, and parents are not aware of it for the most part. So Snapchat is the most popular app for teenagers right now, and it changes all the time, fluctuates back and forth, but right now it's Snapchat. And there is this deal with Snapchat where people get this false sense of security because those photos disappear so quickly, right? The user gets to decide. Snapchat is open on average 30 times a day by a user, and there are 2 million plus snaps sent every single minute around the world. Let me tell you that this whole it's going to disappear within a few seconds thing is a predator's playground. Let's think like a predator would think for a moment. We have a police officer who's joined us. Thank you very much. And here is how I would think if I were a predator. That cop back there, he's not going to be able to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to delete it. I'm going to talk to this kid and I'm going to say, please, your parents, no one will be able to figure it out because it disappears like that. Then we'll think like a child for a moment. Well, my parents are going to know. He's right. Police will never be able to find out. No one will have a clue because this photo is going to disappear within a matter of 2 seconds, 3 seconds, whatever I said that, right? So, problem with that is, what do the predators do? They take screenshots, they take photos with another device, they take videos, and on top of all that, Snapchat actually got in trouble for lying. Photos actually disappeared because they don't, so they got hit with a fine as well. And then some hackers decided we're going to expose to the world just how much they're lying, and we're going to show people how easily we can hack in Snapchat. And they did it within just a few minutes, exposed all kinds of information. And so these predators are using Snapchat, TikTok, all our different social media, like I said earlier, to do things like sextortion of our kids. And I can show you story after story after story, like that one, like this one, where he learned a little 12-year-old raped her. It's just, it's like common stuff. Sex trafficking happening, both grooming and selling our kids over these platforms. Now, I do want to tell you that it's okay that they're doing this because Twitter just came out and explained that to us. So what happened is Twitter just within the last couple of weeks gets hit with a lawsuit for child sex trafficking happening on its site. And here is their response to letting child sex trafficking happen through their platform. The law does not punish a defendant, us, for participation in a lawful venture with child sex traffickers, or knowingly but passively receiving the financial benefits of sex trafficking. Now let me ask you a question. Let's just pause here. Do you think these social media apps care about our children? All they care about is making them money, right? They do not care how much danger that they're putting our kids in. I'm really interested to see how this one is going to play out because last year Facebook got a similar lawsuit in the state of Texas where I live. It made its way all the way up to the Supreme Court in Texas, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Facebook. So like, we're making it easier and easier for the predators. All right, and then here I wanted to show you like with TikTok, Snapchat has been hit with these lawsuits. This one in particular, there in Snapchat is a feature called Discover. And Discover is kind of like that feature in TikTok where you just automatically start getting that feed and you do not have any control over the age that it happens in Snapchat. And they're getting things like secret rules for sex coming into their feed without any kind of filter, being exposed to very, very graphic things on this. The Snap Streaks is like a never-ending viral challenge where for 3 days, 24 hours a day, you're snapping back and forth with one person, and you do not want to be the person who breaks that streak. And it really impacts our kids psychologically as far as popularity. If I'm the one who lets the small fish grabs, people are not going to like me, all that kind of stuff. Some kids will have multiple snap streaks going at the same time. They're juggling it day and night. Very unhealthy for them. And like TikTok had the viral challenges, Snapchat is having, all the social media apps have them. Here's a couple of examples. Did any of you hear of the Tide Pod challenge? Tell me what happened with that one. What do you do in this challenge? So you put it in your mouth and let it melt. The kids are like, no big deal with that, right? It's clean. The only problem is it can cause all this kind of damage internally, leading even to death. So after this one, Snapchat has another one that comes out that was called the Shell Challenge. And in the Shell Challenge, kids would eat plastic, cardboard, and the peels of fruit that you would not normally eat, like oranges, that kind of thing. And so this kid did an interview for the newspaper, and he said, I really like this one. It's kind of like the Tide Challenge, but it's not dangerous, so it's okay, and I can be popular by doing it. The only problem is, doctors came out and said, this challenge, the chemicals inside of the plastic can actually impact their hormones or can cause cancer. Our kids are just free will following these things without understanding the dangers of them. Final one for Snapchat was called the Outlet Challenge, happened pretty recently. What they did with this one is they took their phone charger, plugged it in the wall, left just enough room to stick a penny in between the charger and the electrical outlet, and then it would cause sparks, in some cases fires, and it could even lead to death. Right? Now, the pandemic, once again, has caused the predators to be able to have a payday, and this is one of the biggest ones. Have any of you in here heard of this? Tell us what you know about it. Live challenge, anybody in the whole world, which you can do on a lot of social media, right? It's random. So let me tell you a few things about this one and what happened during the pandemic, still playing out right now. So first of all, a teenage girl said this: it's like the dark web, but for everyone. So all those, if you think about the dark web, think of it as like the mafia of the internet. So this child is saying it's like the dark web, but anyone can access it. You don't have to be able to hack into it or get invited, all those kind of things. So a group of journalists did a 10-hour investigation, an undercover thing. This, like she said, or I think you said, it randomly matches you with people, and you are having either text or video chats, and it's just a random match. And there's no control over age. There's no filter for that. So in this 10-hour period, here are some of the things that they found. First of all, they found in 10 hours, dozens of underage kids on there. Some of them as young as 7 or 8 years old. They found little boys that young masturbating on the camera for these grown people. The grown adults, the adults encouraging them on. That was one thing they found. They also found a man playing truth or dare with an 8-year-old. They found several men doing things themselves, including in 2 hours, 12 men masturbating, 8 naked men, and 7 pornography acts. Then from there, they kept going. I don't know why my clipper's not working very well. Can you not see this? It's so dark. I'm not sure why it's so dark. All right, so then they found that, all right, I already told you that when these little boys were masturbating and they were not even sexually developed yet. This one is particularly, well, they're all alarming, but this one, the kids would be self-penetrating on camera for these adults. And in the background, the journalists could hear hey, Mark, it's time to come down for dinner, or hey, we're about to go to the ball game, come on. So their kids are on camera using objects to penetrate themselves, masturbating, whatever it is, and the parents are in the other room calling the kids to come on for whatever reason. No idea what's happening to their child in the other room. Then they also are capturing this. Again, they'll either use other devices to take a video, they'll screenshot, whatever it is. And a lot of these kind of videos and photos are ending up on hardcore websites of our children. Young children. But the majority of our kids say, you don't understand. We live in a viral world. It's become normalized. And sharing naked photos is not a big deal. That's just what we do in this generation because we've grown up in this viral world. So 40% of them said there's not anything at all wrong with that. And one of them said, we all do it, so it's okay. I need to back up and quit worrying about this. Now this is absolutely the worst one that we really took off during the pandemic. And some people even became millionaires like that because of this app. And the people who made this app, who developed it, the head developer became a billionaire during the pandemic. Okay, anyone heard of this one? OnlyFans? Tell us what you know about it.
It's basically like a subscription site, but most people use it trying to learn and stuff and pay more money to get like special videos.
So I don't know how well you could hear her, but she was saying it's like a subscription base on this one. So you have your channel and people have to pay you to get access to your content. And again, it's a really big deal to become an influencer on these social media apps, and some have become millionaires on this one, but it's mostly pornographic things on here. And so I want to give you some details of what happened with this one during the pandemic. So they start getting pressure because there are young kids on it. So they set up this ID, you have to be so old, and the kids are going around that. And so they say, okay, you've got to hold up your driver's license next to your face, take a photo so that we can verify that you're of age to be able to use this subscription service. And so one 14-year-old girl stole her grandmother's driver's license, put it by her face, took a photo, and used that to get verified to have a channel that she sells subscriptions to. 14 years old. Then linked her grandmother's bank account to her OnlyFans account so that people could pay her, and then somehow she diverts that into her own account. Grandmother never knows. Do you think there might have been a little bit of difference between, this? She was able to do it without any trouble at all, without anything stopping her. There also have been multiple missing kids who have shown up on OnlyFans, images turning up without kids' consent. And again, I will tell you, they're taking these screenshots, videos with other devices, whatever, and then posting them in places where they can make money off of them, group the kids, all that kind of stuff. Their faces have been edited onto other people's bodies and posted on OnlyFans. And then they have, like I've told you a few times now, posted photos and videos from this site onto a hardcore website. Also, there are youth on this site who are able to buy pornography, underage kids able to buy pornography by doing the subscription thing. And they're meeting up with strangers, which that happens on all the apps. The things we've talked about, we've touched on so far, like sextortion, child sex trafficking. One of the things that's really happening with this social media app, and I don't know what the connection is between the two, but pimps or child sex traffickers will go onto Twitter and they'll group kids and then they'll move them onto OnlyFans and sell them through OnlyFans. So the trafficker will set up the subscription channel and sell the kid, and people think the kid's getting the money, but it's really the trafficker who's getting that. Right, so it's happening in a lot of ways. But the good news about OnlyFans, they got a lot of pressure. This is nothing but pornography. Kids are being exposed to pornography. They're being used for pornography. OnlyFans said, okay, we will no longer accept pornography on our site. And that lasted like 2 days. And then they started allowing it back on. The New York Times does a big investigation in 2018, and they found 45 million photos of our children with pornographic images online. How rampant this thing is. And a big deal that they found is that even after someone like this police officer back here goes and hunts these people down and brings the case against them and puts them in jail, tech companies refuse to take those photos of our kids down. They actually refuse to take them down. So they follow these children sometimes for the rest of their lives. Any questions before we touch on a few other social media? Yes.
I've seen it on the slide several times, and I'm probably really naive, but what's sex toy?
I have a whole section later where I'm going to walk you through what it is, how it happens. So it is extremely dangerous and very rampant right now. Great question. We will get to it. Yes.
I have a question. Do you know Snapchat? There's a feature.
That's what that is.
Well, Snapchat.
I think so. I'm pretty sure because one child was selling her feet. I don't remember that slide, but I have it in here. I think I'll do it 2000. But one teenage girl was on, I'm pretty sure it was Snapchat, but she was selling photos of her feet to people. Yeah, it was Snapchat. So she was selling photos of her feet to people. Do you know why? Foot fetishes. So she goes over to OnlyFans and she's posting pretty tame photos, and people start saying to her, you know, like your feet, but if you will do this, then we will pay you more money, or we'll subscribe to your channel, that kind of thing. So she was making pretty good money on Snapchat selling her feet, but on OnlyFans that wasn't graphic enough. So she started masturbating, using sex toys and all that kind of stuff on OnlyFans to make more money and to keep her and grow her base.
That on Snapchat, they were caught finding that they actually took photos of this year. That's something.
Did they what?
Did those things specifically to,
And that one got fifty.
I don't
So, here's what I will say to you again. Predators have gone to jail for doing this to our children, and they won't even take the photos down. So, I guess my answer would be good luck. Twitter is, did you see what Twitter just said in that lawsuit? I don't trust any of them. All right, so I just want to give you a couple of other examples how this is happening just across all platforms. We could stand up here all day long and talk about what's happening on the different apps. One law enforcement department up north did a study, and they found more than 200 dangerous social media apps that youth are using. So let's just talk real quick about YouTube because it's so popular with our youth, and we tend to think, you know, it's just videos, it's pretty safe. But this singer had millions of fans, and he was actually using his stardom to lure girls into sending him new photos. And he would tell them, hey, you know, if you're really my fan, you will send me those photos. And if you're not going to send them to me, don't follow me anymore. And so they would cave in, send them the photos so that they could keep following him. This one is another one that is not quite as well known by parents, but extremely dangerous. It's called Ask FM. And I know before the pandemic, a lot of schools were really concerned about this one for bullying. So one 12th grader was sitting in math class one day, and the thing about Ask FM is you can just talk to the people within, a certain group. And so this question goes out, who are the ugliest girls in 12th grade? So she's sitting in class, and all of a sudden she sees her name pop up on this. Can you imagine what that did to that child? So this one is very, very well known for bullying. All right, and then I wanted to make sure that you have an example of a boy, because this is definitely happening in boys too. So this is an example of a little 13-year-old groomed and raped over social media. Do you want to make sure you understand? I'm not sure why this is not going very well. That it's not just social media. This is rapidly happening on video games too. Very young children. So the most popular video game for children under 13 years old is Roblox. Y'all familiar with Roblox? So tell me what you know about this one. I can get it to come up. What do you know about Roblox? It's a virtual world, kind of like Legos, right? What else do you know about it? Not as innocent as it looks. So in Roblox, like you can build and create games that other people can play, and other people build and create games that you can go play. And it is, again, the number one video game for children under 13 years old. It has more than 100 million players every single month. And so on Roblox, one of the things that's happening, there are kids 4, 5, 6 years old on this game playing it, compare state because it has that little E on it that it's safe. Well, these predators are luring these children's avatars into rooms and raping them, gang raping them, all those kind of things. And let me show you an example of the kind of rooms that they lure them into, the kind of games. So I don't know how well you can see that, but there's the foot fetish thing going on with some other things. So 4, 5, 6 years old, stumbling across these kind of things are intentionally being led into these games inside of Roblox. And then in addition to that, there are sex torture rooms in this game that people are creating. This is an example of a boy, where you really understand this is happening to boys too. His parents start noticing a change in his demeanor, and he starts becoming suicidal, and they don't know why. And eventually they're able to trace it to Roblox. What happened, some predators find that they're like grooming him, going through all those steps, get him to send a photo, blackmail him. If you don't keep doing worse and worse things, then we're going to tell your parents all that. So he actually became suicidal. But it's not just sexual things that we have to worry about on these social media apps and on these video games. This is Roblox, a game that was created. You can find several of these out there if you go look for them. But in addition, someone turned it into a YouTube video. So at least 2 places that our kids can stumble across something like this. Shooting videos in a game for children under 13 years old. And available on YouTube, step by step, here's how you do this. And Fortnite, this is dangerous. So just like with social media apps, we could go through every video game pretty much, and if it's connected online and they're playing with other people, we've got the same thing happening on the video games that you do within the social media apps. In Fortnite, 1 in 4 youth between 11 and contacted through chat or voice or one of these different methods on there. Okay, so let's talk about some things you can do. Again, we can sit here all day long and talk about different apps and stuff. Think about these things for any social media or any video game that your child is on. So the first thing that I would encourage you to do is you become the parental. So you become the parental control. Whether it's the school, whether it's the parent, whatever the situation is, you cannot trust these social media companies, the big tech platforms, right? I think we've established that by now. So you have to stay on top of this if you want to keep your children safe. Second thing is you want to talk to them about what is happening online. Help them understand the unintentional danger, the danger that they're putting themselves into unintentionally, because they are actively hiding things from adults on social media that they don't understand how dangerous it is. And then you want to just have those ongoing conversations to shut this down. Don't think it's a once and done conversation with your child. I would even be having them weekly if my kids were still that age. You don't understand why this is not good. Usually it goes on 8 All right, this is something that I found works extremely well with youth, especially traumatized youth. If you let them be part of the conversation, part of setting the ground rules, they buy into it more. If you just tell them, here's the way it's going to be on social media, you're not going to have it in your room, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that, they're going to look for ways to get around that rule. But if you sit down with them, have the conversation, develop the rules together. We opened a safe house for youth who have been trafficked, and we even would sign it and have them sign it. And then there's that accountability, that buy-in. That wasn't their idea, this is my idea, and so they stick to it a lot better. You also want to make sure, and I would just tell you, not only for your children, but for yourself, make sure you know what you're agreeing to. So for example, when you download or your kids downloaded TikTok, did you know that you couldn't delete it unless you asked permission from TikTok to delete it? So what are you agreeing to? Go read their terms and conditions, their instructions, all those kind of things before you sign up for that account. And then you want to make sure that you understand the default settings. So for example, go back to Snapchat Discover. No age restrictions on who that feed goes to, with the sexual content, the violent content, all those kind of things. So what are the default settings, and do I have the ability to turn those off for my child or for myself? And here's an example. Snapchat has a feature called Quick Add. And with Quick Add, Snapchat is to decide who they recommend pairs up together and becomes whatever you're calling Snapchat, friends or whatever it is. And so they do these algorithms that look at things like common interests, those kind of things. So all a predator has to do is go put certain things that they want to look for. Let's say I'm a child sex trafficker and I have customers asking me for teenage boys who are 14 years old, not sexually developed, and they like to play Roblox. Well, what am I going to go put in there to get matched randomly with these kids? So you can go in and turn that feature off, but by default, it's automatically on. So just figure out what those things are, turn them off, set them to the highest setting. Same thing with Snap Maps. With Snap Maps, I can tell you in a second where you're located, once again, right down to the room. Predators are going and looking for those things. So you have to go in and manually turn that off. Now, not only that, but parents are unintentionally putting their kids in danger through something called, it's part of this, but it will put your location in the photo right inside of the app. So let's say you're at, y'all don't have Starbucks, right? What do y'all have around? Do you have Starbucks? Okay.
Okay,
So- And what?
Victoria, we're up there.
Okay, yeah, y'all are. Did I put that in my app on my ear? I didn't see it, so we gotta fix that one. So let's say you go to Starbucks and, or your kids go to Starbucks and they're in a group and they take a photo and they post it on Snapmaps. And I'm looking for that 14-year-old boy that I just described to you, and I see that pop up in my feed. What do I know? Where he's at, and then all I have to do is go start that conversation. And remember, online, that conversation takes about 18 minutes on average. How quick can you do it in person? And that's all out there in these different social media apps. So you want to set the controls to the very highest, strictest levels. But you also want to understand that does not stop predators. You also want to go back and check those privacy settings pretty frequently, especially if you do an upgrade. You know how like iPhone will just update when you're sleeping automatically? Well, when that happens, a lot of times it kicks back to the default settings, even though it was the phone that updated, not the app. So you've got to go back and manually change those things again. You also want to close the back door. Now, here's what I mean on this one. Which is Roblox, for example. Roblox has a chat feature in it, where when you're online, you can chat with people. What a lot of adults do not understand, third parties can come in and overlay another chat feature into Roblox. So your kids may be going out of Roblox, chatting with people in another platform, and you don't even realize because it's a third party layover type thing. So you have to know what they have access to beyond even what is available through this platform. What is the platform allowing to tap to it? And a lot of times these social media giants will come back and say, well, you can't hold us accountable for that because it's not our chat room. It's not our chat service, so it's not our fault. And then predators get free rein. All right, another thing that you want to do when your child is approached by a predator online, you want to make sure that you report it to that app. The more people who report it, the more pressure that we can put on them for the kind of things that we've been talking about today. You also want to report it to that National Center for Missing Exploited Children cyber tip line. That website is missingkids.org. And then I always recommend that anytime it's online, that they go to federal law enforcement because it crosses state boundaries and can sometimes be global. What's your recommendation here in a small community? To FBI or to local? Okay, so I always say, follow your local law enforcement, local child welfare, all that kind of stuff, right? So, but make sure you report it to the 3 different entities because the more that we have it documented, the more that we can make changes. Okay. Yes.
What if you found like on that app with the child and that goes to the child for law enforcement.
I guess it depends on what you're asking, like you say, kidnap or something?
Yeah, like the child or from online to.
It's super situational, so just report to whoever, and it's not like local, then we pull that somewhere else. We work with,
Yeah. You talk about internet funds for children. If he's sitting back there thinking, you're not a dog, it's not working. Yeah, but I always want people to know the local, and especially in an area like yours, because you're more connected in the smaller community, right? All right, so any other questions before we kind of switch gears a little bit? Everyone good? All right, so here we go. Let's talk about our children online. I did drop this the other day, so that might be my problem. social media, like you probably already knew before you walked in this room, but if not, it's probably pretty clear by now that it is a loaded weapon. And evidence-based research is showing more and more just how dangerous it is for our children, not only because of predators, but because of all the mental health issues that it is causing. So with social media, research is showing that since the year 2000, when it really kind of exploded, that anxiety, depression, envy, all those kind of things have really exploded for teenagers. So much so that we're even again having to come up with words to describe it. So you remember vamping, being up all night like a vampire. There's this one now called fear of missing out. Have you seen that online? So everybody is posting just the best parts of their life. And you have things like the Kardashians with all the filters, and teenagers have all these pressures to be like that, to have followers, all that kind of stuff. So steady increase in these things since the year 2000. And then in addition to that, it's leading to eating disorders, poor body image, cutting, substance abuse, all those kind of things. And to the point of clinically diagnosable post-traumatic stress disorder. And may I add, not just for our children, but for adults as well. So for example, a couple of weeks ago, I had dinner with one of my friends for her birthday, and she was about to fall asleep. And I'm like, Terry, what is wrong with you? What's going on? And she was like, I was up all night on TikTok. I don't know what's like, I know better. I don't know what I'm doing. So for adults as well as kids, but we don't have to worry because they added in that 5-second pause, so that's good, right? 56% of teenagers say that if they do not have their cell phone, that they're anxious, depressed, all those kind of things, and that's just the ones who are admitting it, right? Probably the number is close to 100%, if not 100%. And then it goes even deeper. Evidence-based research is starting to expose the link between all this social media use and suicide. So let's look at that for a moment. The suicide rate for ages 10 to 24 has jumped 56% in less than 24 years. Now, these are research studies that are tied into social media, right? They're looking specifically at that. In 2017, the suicide rate was the highest it had been in decades. And then during the pandemic last year, the number of girls, teenage girls, going to the ER, 12 to 17 years old, a 51% increase in a 1-year period for trying to kill themselves. Now, why? The girls put out comparison that they specifically condemn. Lonely, hopelessness, nothing to do, boredom. By the way, I have a former child sex trafficker that's part of my team. He was in the game for 32 years, had more than 150 victims, all 50 states, Canada, and Europe. And he will tell you that the pandemic was a predator's dream country, right? How easy it would be just to talk that he helps people understand the psychological warfare that predators wage on our children. And he just talks about how easy that made it for predators to get right in there and get them. Now, the thing about this addictive thing that we're talking about, there are people out there who teach these tech developers how to intentionally make their product addictive. Every year in San Francisco, there is a conference put on that teaches any kind of product. Here's how to make it, like addictive with the marketing, that kind of thing. But they have a whole dedicated track for people in the social media realm. Here's how you make it addictive. Now, before all of that, with Facebook, do y'all remember the very beginnings of social media? That Facebook was the big one. A couple of years ago, 2 high-level, senior-level Facebook executives quit. And they said, no way would we let our kids be on social media. because we know how addictive it is. And in fact, when we helped like bring Facebook up to prominence, we knew what we were doing. We knew that we were creating it to be addictive. However, here's what one of them had to say. If I had known that the short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created would destroy society, I wouldn't have been part of it. You don't understand, but you are being intentionally programmed. Now, we're adults, so we can kind of think things through. What does it do to a child when they're being intentionally programmed? And we've seen how little responsibility these social media platforms take, right? You don't realize that when you're being programmed. I knew what I was doing, but if I would have known how drastically it would reshape society, would not have been a part of it. Right, so I wanted to kind of walk you through what we've been talking about so far, what this looks like for a child. So they have this addiction to social media, and that addiction leads them into the envy, loneliness, depression, all those kind of things. That leads them into unhappiness, hopelessness, that which leads to the clinically diagnosable PTSD, which leads them to negative coping mechanisms like pornography addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, sexual addiction. What does it matter if I sell my photos on OnlyFans because I'm going to make money, all that kind of stuff. And then that leads them into these epidemic levels of suicide like we've been talking about. So this is a vicious circle that is playing out for our kids. Their brains are not the way they're developed to know how to break this kind of cycle. So let's talk about that. Our children on average are putting into their brains 34 gigabytes of online information a day, which translates to 2.2 million, 8.5 by 11 pages of data a day. Teenagers are stuffing into their brains. Now, I want you to go back to when you were a teenager. Y'all remember that time? Can you imagine trying to take 2.2 million pages of 8.5 by 11 filled with information and stuffing that into your brain every single day? What would it have done to you? What's it doing to our children stuffing that much information into their brains? Overload, right? Waiting for that pressure valve to burst. So one recommendation that I have is to set limits. I know in the state of California, especially with foster youth, there's some laws around that, their hands are tied. So that's where you have to get into those conversations, get that agreement, get them as part of the conversation. But you do need to realize exactly how dangerous it is for our kids. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like going up to a 2-year-old and saying, hey, here's Power Saw. Be careful, sweetie. It's a bit dangerous if you don't use it right. You're just letting them go do whatever they want to do, right? That's how much power that we're putting in our children and teenagers' hands at the same time that their brains are not developed enough to be able to handle it. So the front of their brain where logic happens, not developed, and they cannot logically think through cause and effect consequences. So if I send this one picture on Snapchat, it's going to disappear, self-destruct, so I don't have to worry about it, right? They cannot logically think through what a predator could do, how to change their life forever, that Snapchat may not give it to someone who needs a subpoena, or it might be up there when they get ready to get married or submit their college application or whatever it is. At the same time that they can't think through long-term consequences, their emotions are on a roller coaster. It is like putting them on a roller coaster without a seatbelt. That's how their emotions are. And our kids tend to, brain science, make decisions based on their emotions at that age, especially when they are under stress, and what child is not under stress right now with the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. And then also when they're given something tempting. So, you know, a predator comes along and says to this kid, hey, you send me this picture, I'll do this for you. Or you send me this picture, we'll run away together, whatever it is, right? So our children, teenagers, 200% more likely to die from putting themselves in danger compared to a child. But again, that goes back to stage of brain development. It's just a fact that they take risks at that age and that they don't understand how much danger that it can put them in. Sorry about this. So this, like, I don't know about y'all, but when my kids were teenagers, this was like kind of a relief thing for me. And I would think, if I could just make it like 5 more years, I'm going to survive this thing. They'll start thinking logically, all of that. So the good news is it's rooted in science. The bad news is predators take advantage of that fact. So I'm going to walk you through one more cycle. And what I want you to think about is the other cycle I showed you up against this one and what our kids are facing from the 2 different directions. So on this one, they're hiding their social media use from us, and I'm going to walk you through how they're doing that. And then they have all the social media fallout from the addiction. Predators are able to hide behind their computer screens, their cell phones to get to them. They don't worry so much about getting caught by law enforcement because they can hide like that. They send that one photo, that one video, the predator starts using it to blackmail them. They get involved in those things we've been talking about. Before we know it, torture, murder, suicide, all those kind of things. So as adults, we have to be more vigilant in what is happening to our kids online and helping them understand before it's too late. We have to have these conversations early, and we have to have them very frequently. Now, I want to give you another dynamic here. Our kids, because they are so connected into social media now, their identities are actually being built online. It's no longer being built in school or at home, all those kind of things. A big part of who they are is being built virtually. So I want you to think about this. Constantly, they're going online and they're pouring out the heart. And they're telling the world, here's who I want you to see me as. These are my dreams, my hopes, my likes, my dislikes, my heartbreaks, my deepest longings. This is what's happening to me. This is how I want you to see me. And then some of these social media giants are preying on that. For example, I don't know if any of you saw just a few weeks ago, the big hearing in Congress where they brought in Facebook and some emails have leaked out. Did anyone see this? Do you want to tell me anything about it? It's actually a different one, but we're going to talk about that one too. So do you want to?
I don't know.
Okay. So what happened is Facebook owns Instagram. And Instagram did a big 3-year research study on how their platform impacts teenage girls. And at the same time they're getting these results, they're planning to launch an under 13 version of Instagram. The problem was they were finding through this research conclusively that Instagram is causing our teenage girls tremendous amounts of psychological damage. So for example, it's causing them anxiety, stress, poor body image. And they said when they are feeling bad about themselves and then they go look at Instagram, it makes them feel even worse about themselves. Now, one thing that happened in this study is Instagram, Facebook did not ask this question question, but unprompted, these teenage girls who were participating said that they blamed Instagram for making them have increased anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. So they're recognizing it and they're coming out and saying, and by the way, when I did the teen version of this, which is much tamer, I used Selena Gomez as an example because she will not get on social media anymore. She has recognized how it's destroying her generation and kind of came out and talked about that. Now she's still on there, but she's paying someone else to post what she writes, and she will not go look at it at all because she recognized how much it was damaging her identity. But so are these girls. Now, just like we talked about with TikTok and the Davis algorithm and Snapchat, same thing is happening on Instagram, intentionally programmed to send them harmful content. Right? Oh, okay, so. All right, sorry, we have to go through all this again, but I'll go ahead and retell it. So research has found that teenagers are more impacted by negative feedback than adults are. So when you think about the environment we're in right now, I don't do social media at all because it is so hateful and people are like tearing each other apart on there. It's just very mean-spirited, right? How does that impact you as an adult? Someone tell me. When you just see all the negative and hateful, what does that do to you as an adult? Makes what?
Just me, like,
Anxiety, right?
I want to, like, I on social media. I want to see it.
Yeah, so it impacts our identity, right? It is very polarizing. So for our kids, it is even more so for us. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you this part. So this internal research gets leaked out, and Mark Zuckerberg, you know, they do this big hearing in Congress and stuff, and all these facts come out that these kids are saying in their own internal research group. And he said, but here's the deal, it can have positive mental health benefits. For him, because he gets all the money from it, right? Okay, so teenagers more vulnerable to negative feedback. So every time they're going out there and they're posting their likes, their dislikes, their dreams, here's how I want you to see me, world. The world is saying, well, actually, here's how I see you. So people are posting negative comments back to them. That has a tremendous impact on them psychologically and emotionally. So all these things we've been talking about in the other parts, they get hit with it again right here in this part of it. So can you see that every direction they're getting hit with these things that are having a tremendous psychological degradation for them to the point of suicide. Now here, TikTok, OnlyFans, Omega is one of the ones most concerning to me that parents probably don't even know about. Have any of you heard of this one? So this one is kind of like a hybrid video game and social media site. And what happens with it is it matches you randomly with people, and your avatars get together in an unmoderated chat room. And remind me where the 90% of this solicitation happens. Chat rooms, right? So they meet up in chat rooms and they're having virtual sex, their avatars in these unmonitored chat rooms. The thing about this one, avatars are extremely popular with children and teenagers right now, and they get to kind of live a counter identity, a dual identity, based on how they design their avatar. So, you know, if you want to go to the chat room and have virtual sex with someone, what is your avatar going to need to look like? So sexy, you know, revealing, all those kind of things. So they're building these virtual images of themselves that they, in their mind, think they have to look like to please people and to appeal to people. And that becomes part of their identity because they cannot separate the virtual world from the real world anymore. Now, here's both the good news and the bad news, okay? Science has proven that our brains actually rewire even for traumatized children, right? So have you heard that saying, neurons that fire together wire together? So the more time that you spend with someone or something, the more your brain wires to think like that and to be like that. So the bad news is if you're going and you're spending hours and hours and hours in one of these kind of places we're talking about, your brain is being wired to think like that. Now I will tell you, in addition to Derek, the former child sex trafficker, one of his victims who became his bottom, do you know that term? So the top girl, she became his top girl. She was first victimized at 11 years old, and she was in the game for decades, and she became no longer the victim, but the victimizer, right? Why do you think Denise became the victimizer when she had been a victim since she was 11 years old? What? That's true, but there's another reason as well. So she said, doesn't want to be victimized anymore, so becomes the victimizer. But there's another deeper reason.
How we, the victimizer.
So she's been with Derek 6-7 years, because she learned to think like. And it's even more than the trauma bond, is that her brain is actually being rewired to think like Derek because he's teaching her intentionally how to think like him. And so whoever they're spending their time with, or whatever they're spending their time with, that's how their brain's going to wire. So if they're in one of these video games or social media apps, like let's say OnlyFans, and people are constantly saying, hey, I'm going to pay you money if you will use sex toys or masturbate for me on camera. Or one 15-year-old boy videoed him and his girlfriend having sex, sold it for $5,000. So the more people are saying, hey, you give me more of that, or will you do this for me? What's their brain being wired like? All right. Any questions? How are y'all doing? So let's go through this section and then we'll take a break, okay?
Yes, I have a question because I have grandkids and there's a new one that's called, I think it's like Junior Messenger, that's part of Facebook, because they asked me to join and it's so you could FaceTime and message each other, but it's a social media thing, they have games and everything, but I mean, there's so little and they're constantly messaging me on that or we're live chatting on it and everything, so I haven't seen it pop up, so.
Like there are so many we can talk about and we just don't have time. I would be concerned.
Of that one. too.
I would be concerned with
I think
any.
it's part of Facebook, but it's all
Messenger
kids,
yeah.
yeah, it's kids messenger or something.
Here's what I would recommend. How old are your kids?
Well, not a lot, but they're anywhere from 2 to 7.
Like the ones who are doing this are under 7?
Yeah,
7? So I would just think about everything I've shown you and I would be scared. And remember that one headline on Ask FM? I would be scared, very scared. Because no matter what that social media app tells you, they're not protecting our children and predators know how to go around it, right? Okay, so this ball, someone else blew up for me last week when we were, when I was doing a training in another county. And so I want to blow it back up because of COVID. So I am just going to, they're going to have to have a little bit of a deflated ball. But what I want you to do, I'm going to just throw it in there wherever your hand lands, your right hand. I want you to read the question and then y'all answer it for me, okay? So let's see. No, not good. We're going to blame it on the amount of air.
What percent of teens say parents don't need to know what they are doing online?
What percent of teens say parents do not need to know what they are doing online? 95%. Okay, I'm not going to tell you the answer yet. She said 100%. Go ahead and throw it. Don't make me look bad. I figured you didn't. No, just read a different question.
What percent of teens admit hiding what they do online?
What percent of teens admit to hiding things from adults online? 90, how many? 54, 75.
Wait, these are ones that admit it?
Admit it, yeah.
Oh, I would say like 25.
25, okay, 32. All right, throw it to someone else. Oh, that was smart. Don't go farther than you were really good.
What percent of teens clear their browsing history?
What percent of teens clear their browsing history? 90-something? 98? 10%? Let's do one more. Remember, we're back to, are you smarter than an online teen? Woo! Good try. Why that we haven't done yet?
What percent of teens admit to blocking parents?
What percent, none of your kids would do that, right? What percent of kids, teens admit to blocking parents? Admit to it.
45.
45? 2. Okay, so let's look at some of the answers, okay? Let's see what kids actually say. And by the way, I probably should have told you this, but this was anonymous. So they're probably a little more afraid, but still, all of them are probably not admitting it. All right, so first of all, most people think that they do know what their kids are doing online, but in reality, research has shown that only about 15% of parents really know what their kids are doing. So about 50%. All right, so how many of you in this room think that you could find out what your kids or teenagers are doing online? That you can go look and figure out what they're doing? He can do that. That's cheating because you have special tools. So I have to tell you, this actually happened in California. I did a training one night for parents and, different people in PTA at a school. And one of the teachers walks up to me, she goes, I'm really worried because some of these temperature things, I hear my son saying, do you think he could be doing these things? And I said, yes. So the next day I go into the different, like I do the boys and one time with the girls, and her son's in one of the sessions, and he walks up to me afterwards and he goes, doing those things, and I didn't know, can I get in trouble? And I was like, yes, you and your mom need to go talk. She was a teacher in school and didn't have any idea what he was doing. So here we go, here are the answers. More than 3 in 4 teenagers say that you cannot figure out what they are doing online. More than 3 in 4. I'm not exactly like one of them or a half person or whatever that is. 2 in 3 teens say parents do not need to know what they're doing online. So that's the majority of teenagers, right? So here's what I would tell you. Know what they know. What you have to do is you've got to stay on top of these things. You've got to go out there and research it. I told you several things today that have happened in the last few weeks, right? So you have to stay current. Now let me give you a little secret that's not as detailed as he can give you, but I'm going to give you a little tool to help you with this. On your, when you do like a Google search, there's a little thing up at the top on the right-hand side that says something like any tools or something like that. If you click on that, it'll bring down the drop box and you can tell in a time period that you want to look at. And just click like in the last month or whatever, so that you can stay current on what is just now happening. And children actually too are doing online. So know what they know.
Not with her phone or just like.
It's when you're on the internet. So if you're on the internet on your phone, like in a Google search, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, take a break and I'll show you. Doesn't show everybody. All right, so 70% of teens admitted to hiding what they do from their parents online. I want to tell you some of the ways they do that. Officer, please feel free to jump in if you know other ways. And like, they're going to give you some cookies or something for all the help that you're getting. Okay, all right, so here we go. So first of all, there are things like fake educational websites or apps. There's all kinds of secret apps that cover other things up, and they look like calendars, they look like photo albums, that kind of thing. So you have to know that. But then Apple helps our kids out. You're going to get a handout at the end of this that has some of these different ways that technology companies are helping our kids hide things from us, but this is one of them. So let's say your child is sexting and they don't want you to be able to find those photos. Apple walks you through step by step how to hide your photos, how to hide your music, how to hide your videos, so nobody can find them on your phone. Except for the fact on that handout, I show you how to reverse it, okay? Yes.
Also, Snapchat, I saw after my, like, the last, it's very long for my.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that. So go back to what I said, know what your kids know. And do you know how I know what I'm showing you? I just research all the time. Research what is happening, what is happening. All right, then be aware that Snapchat is not the only place where they can do the self-destructing things. So there are other places like this where they're doing things and it takes it off their phone and you don't know that they're doing that. Now, during the pandemic, this used to be a thing a few years ago, but during the pandemic, it has made a huge comeback. You'll remember earlier I said they will set up fake accounts. Well, on Instagram, that has become a really big deal during the pandemic. So is this the one you were talking about earlier with the congressional hearings?
I was a whistleblower.
Okay, yeah, that was different too. Okay, so during the pandemic, fake Instagram accounts have exploded. They're called Pistas or Finsta. And what happens is your kid has an account that you follow and you're like, oh, they're so cute, and look what they did today and all that kind of stuff. Well, they're just doing that for your benefit. And then they have a separate account that's their real account for their friends and predators to be able to follow them. Now this exploded so hugely during the pandemic that they just had a congressional hearing a few weeks ago, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it was hilarious if you get the chance to go watch a little clip of it. So one of our senators was like debating this woman who works for Facebook. I want to know right now, are you going to go on there and take down this Finsta thing? And then she says, this global executive from Facebook says, Senator, I'm sorry, but that's not one of our products. We can't take it down. No, you're not answering me. Are you going to take this thing down? Sir, I'm sorry, this is not a product. This is just something that teenagers do because they want more privacy online. Now, it's not our product, so we cannot take it down, but here's what we did because it is such a big issue. What made this thing explode during the pandemic is the fact that teenagers, they really want to be able to hide things from their parents. They want more privacy. And we heard them say that, so we said, yeah, okay, we'll build in some more features for you to be able to hide things from your parents. And we did that. And the person testifying before Congress that they put in more features to help our kids hide things from us was the Facebook global head of what? We think these tech platforms care about our children. What do they care about? Money, right? So if we're leaving it up to them, and I don't care where is over there, the one you just asked me about your grandkids, I don't care how safe they tell you it is, they do not care no matter the age of the kid. Okay? All right, they've got things like, we used to have burner phones, those are still around, where you can go somewhere like CVS, buy this phone, so that, and those are big, ones called sex traffickers, so they can throw them away, police can't track them. But now they've got burner numbers where you can just randomly get from an app a phone number and use it without your parents being able to know that. Jailbreaking is on an iPhone, rooting is on Android, and what that is they are hacking into their phone's operating system to allow them, like they're bypassing even Apple or Google to be able to go things that are not even in their stores. So getting very dangerous kind of things. There are also things like this, step-by-step, how to reset a phone's password. So if your parents are blocking you, they use Google and these particular parts of Google to bypass our controls. And then there are things like this. People going online and step-by-step telling our kids how to deceive us. So you go load on your child's phone one of those little apps or Find My Phone or that, so you know if they're supposed to be at Starbucks with their friends, they're safe, right? So here's how step-by-step, child, to deceive your parents on where you are. So your child meets up with the wrong person on Snapchat and goes with them, it becomes hard for even law enforcement to find them because they fake their location. We have no idea where they are. Hey, are y'all having fun? So I just heard someone like sigh. We're almost to a break, so just hang in there. How said they change their behavior if they know that their parents are watching? One way they do that is by clearing their browser history. So I'll tell y'all something in a second. But a lot of times they forget. So, just go check and see what is in their history. They'll do it sometimes, forget other times, that kind of thing. Look at their history through the image tab and see what you can find there because they don't know to do that a lot of times. So I was in that, and then, this is what like you were talking about through Snapchat, only you can see the status. So almost anything has that now. Do a system restore, that'll bring back up their history. So this is what I was going to tell you. I was in a high school last week doing the youth version of this, and I told them I can find whatever you do through your cookies, and like it leaves a trail, like real cookies, like crumbling up. And one boy comes up to me afterwards, he's like, I didn't know about this big thing. And I mean, you could just like see the terror in his eyes that someone could follow this little trail of cookies. If you don't know about cookies, you don't know how to find them, do what our kids do. Just go search, do a Google search, and know how to do these things that our teenagers are doing. If you do a backup, like on my time machine, it gives you the complete history of everything that's been stored. 71% admitted that they block parents, they use private browsing, all those kind of things. So how are y'all doing on those percentages? Very good. If they are using private browsing, which it depends on your, like if you're using Safari or whatever your platform is, it's called different things, but it's often recoverable. So like in an iPhone, you can go into the settings and recover that if they're hiding it from you. One thing that they will do is they will install a separate operating system on your computer. So they go in, they reboot your computer, and they go into a separate part of it. And then when they're done, they reboot it again and take it back to your operating system. So you have no idea when you have this dual thing going on your computer. Okay, there's another one that is very important. So like right now, Apple, iPhone, what are we at, 13? 13 is the big deal. And so you get rid of that device or you just deactivate it, you toss it in the drawer somewhere. Mom walks into her son's 14-year-old son's bedroom and stuff something under his pillow. And she goes over and pulls it out, and it's her old iPhone. And he has set up a secret Apple ID. The phone still worked on Wi-Fi, so he was using that to bypass all their controls. Right, so just because it's been deactivated doesn't mean it works. Another thing they will do is you've got your router, but they might set up a secret router, like put it under their bed, put it in their closet. You have no idea that they're going around your controls. Another one is called a VPN, it's a virtual private network. So what happens with that is it redirects everything, it's very hard to detect it. So you want to watch for things that don't add up. Like if you're getting charged for something on your credit card that you haven't authorized, like a VPN, to start asking questions, right? Look for data links, VPN links, that kind of thing. And again, a lot of this is in the handout, so you don't have to write all this down. Check your DNS reports to see if things are adding up. So for example, if your child has Instagram that is never showing up on your report, they're bypassing something on there. If you get to the point of an onion router, you need to be terrified because what happens with this is it goes through several different layers, several different networks, and every single one of those servers that it goes through is operated by a volunteer, and they can tap into that information, get your data. And on top of that, these are so sketchy, it's so underground, that it also alerts law enforcement to something shady, like really bad crime can be happening. So they might just show up at your door one day unsolicited because of that. So keep an eye out for words like proxy or hide. These kind of words can give you an indicator that they've either got an onion router, a VPN, that kind of thing set up. And then there's always the turning off the Wi-Fi, going to someone else's house. When those things start happening, it's really hard to determine what they're doing. One thing you can do is if they have a data package and they're using too much or not enough, like if they're home and they're not using the Wi-Fi, red flags should be going up if they're just using their data package. Right, this one is another big one. If you look at their add-ons or their plugins, the extensions to websites they're going to, and I'm going to give you an example in just a little bit of one that's very dangerous. That can give predators an open door as well. I've already talked about the gaming systems. I would just caution you that they can put you in jeopardy for identity theft, all kinds of different things like that as well. So make sure you change your password often, that they're not looking when you do, that it's not something easy they can figure out. 34% said they hide or delete their instant messages. Sometimes they do it right in a public post and you have no idea what they've done. Now remember that fake relocation. I want to show you another example of how people are helping our teenagers deceive us. So this child goes online and says, hey, I don't even know how to have a relationship with my boyfriend because my parents won't let me talk to him online. So this person answers and says, hey, no, I'm not going to judge you. I know what you're doing. You want to stay safe. You're not going to put yourself in danger, anything like that. But if you do decide you're going to put yourself in danger, make sure you talk to your parents or you come back here, talk to me, that kind of thing, okay? But since I know you're not going to put yourself in danger, here's what you do. Change the name of your boyfriend's phone in your contact list to your best friend. And then, here's some apps that you can hide your conversations, and here's a link to them. And also, you have the option of using some other things too, like Google Chat. And here you go, I'm going to give you a link to these super chats. But make sure you stay safe out there, okay? And have fun. All right, why don't we, let me tell you this one, then we'll take a break. So you might have noticed in there the word Kibo. Kibo is one of those secret apps for going inside one app and sending hidden messages that people can't find. So you see that? TechCrunch, has anyone heard of this publication? So TechCrunch is one of the leading, it's probably the leading technology publication for Silicon Valley. It's very, very well respected. I look at it all the time to stay on top of emerging trends. But here's what TechCrunch taught our kids. So here's this app that you can use to hide your secret messages. Because maybe your parents are snooping around and you don't want them to know. Every one of these things, they're being helped in every direction. All right, so why don't we take a 10-minute break? Let's see what time it is. So we're going to switch gears and get into those very specific dangers like extortion. So before we do, I just want to pause for a moment, see how you're doing, see any questions on anything we've talked about so far. But you know what? Here's the deal. If we teach our youth, then you get a different response from them. Like I'm telling you, when we did that high school on Friday, they stuck around throughout their lunch period to talk to us. The one thing we're doing in Back County is we're raising up youth to be part of the solution, like talking to other kids formally. That can make a big difference too. They'll listen to each other much more than we'll listen to us, right?
I think one of the things that was in the earlier session that really hit me was the separate identities that they're having online and social media, because I feel like that really impacted my daughter growing up, and I didn't realize how much it affected her. Like she was saying she wanted to get like a nose job, you know, she's a pretty girl, but she was so caught up in what everybody thought and how many likes she got. And of course, then she went into Instagram, and now she's in college and everything, but now it's TikTok, you know, and I'm like, wow, she spent so much time on videos. I'm putting my time to spend doing that. So it's just all unhealthy stuff, and it starts young, and so on. And then I noticed, for myself, that you could flip your phone like that, and it'll tell you how long you've been online today, or how long. And I started using that because I've got my phone too much too. 55 minutes already. There'll be some days, and I'll be like, stop. What the heck? My thumb's sore, you know? My eyes are sore.
I know.
So,
And I want y'all to think about this, especially like Bonnie with her foster youth, if anyone else does. This is one thing when you're talking about a teenager who's grown up in a healthy home. But when you're talking about highly traumatized youth, you have other things impacting them as well. And then we layer all of this on top of it. There is so easy. So easy. And this was so interesting too last week. Like my favorite thing to do is talk to the youth because you can create change, right, by talking to them. So we were in the hall, we were talking to one teenage girl as we were leaving, and she was like literally processing out loud to us. And she was saying, just like you were just doing, too much time on my social media. I didn't realize, she's like talking it through, and then you know she's going to go take action because of it. So it's really education, right? All right, what else before we keep going? I want to make sure we get all these things. Are y'all doing okay? It's about to get rough. Everyone good? All right, so let's talk about sextortion, what it is, and It's so weird. What do you think about it?
They disappeared.
Interesting technology, eh? So I think I figured out what's happening with my clicker. So last week, I went to set it on a flip chart thing, so I'm leading them through a protocol for their county. And as I went to set it on there, I was like, don't do that, Dina, because it's going to fall off. And I did it anyway, it fell off, and I kicked it back to stay on. So I think my batteries keep like inching out. So, sorry about that. All right, so let's talk about sextortion. So I doubt there's anyone in your county who by now hasn't at least heard the term human trafficking, right? Or bullying or all that kind of stuff. Because awareness has really grown. But the DOJ came out, Department of Justice in 2016, and said this direct quote: sextortion is by far the most significantly growing threat to children. Now, does anyone in this room know what sextortion is? That is the biggest growing threat to our children. And that's how predators get in, right? Because we don't know about the things that they are doing. So I want to give you a couple of examples, and then I'm going to walk you through what it is. So this man posed as Justin Bieber to get girls to follow him online. And I'll just give you just like a little quick heads up. I know, why are you laughing? Tell me why you're laughing. Genius. Oh, genius idea, but why out? Because like, who's going to look at him and believe he's Justin Bieber, right? Okay, I'm going to show you how. So sextortion is really like the old blackmail where they get something on you and then they use it to make you do other things they want you to do. Okay, we'll go deeper into that, but that's a little overview. So he pretends to be Justin Bieber. He had like all these victims in this. And I look at him and I'm like, I don't think so. But let me show you how technology is helping predators do this. So, has anyone in here heard of the catfish challenge on TikTok? Hey, catfishing is a big, big deal right now in our country. And what catfishing is where they steal someone's identity and they create this fake account, and then they go after whatever they want from that person, whether it is photos or do this on camera for me or let's meet up or whatever it is. So there was one like little ring of men in the Fresno area who had more than 50 victims of child sex trafficking. They're setting up a fake profile of a young woman. You can have this exciting life like her, all that kind of stuff. That's called catfishing. Fake account, lure them in. So here's how easy catfishing is now. They went out, this group of men in Fresno area went out and they stole the woman's photos. She was like in her early 20s. They stole her photos off of Facebook or Instagram or somewhere, and then they built this fake account using her actual stuff. And here's how easy it is now. Okay, so you see how easy it is now? When you snap of a finger, no longer do you have to go steal someone's identity. You can just use filters and things to become whoever you want to be. And in addition to that, they have programs online where you can, so let me back up and tell you this real quick. So for a period of time, like predators keep figuring things out, social media keeps making it easier, and then, you know, we try to fix the problem with some new safety features, predators figure, so you get the cycle, right? So there was this short time period where people would verify someone's identity through the webcam. So that became the Well, technology comes along and develops where that man who posed as Justin Bieber can fake using his webcam. So now there's a video playing on your computer that makes it look like you're using your webcam, but it's really a video. And in addition to that, they also have voice changers. So you can become anyone you want to be, including Justin Bieber, with a snap of a finger, brain not fully developed software that easily, right? All right, so with sextortion, what typically happens is it is a slow and steady screening process. Now, it can be faster, like they might hack in to your information, get a sexting photo or something like that, use it to blackmail you, but typically it is going through a process, building a relationship, and then getting what it is that they want from you. And as they go through this process, typically what happens, their demands get more and more graphic, more and more intense, more and more humiliating for that child. So one photo takes them down this very dangerous path, but they're afraid to tell anyone because they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get their devices taken away. They don't want to get their social media taken away, all that kind of stuff. So I want to show you, with their brains not fully developed, how easy it is for a predator to lead a child into sextortion. Has anyone heard of the Amanda Todd story? Right. So I'm going to let Amanda tell you her story. She is going to do it through these cards, and she's going to walk you through step by step how sextortion works.
There's no one in town who gave us someplace to go. I never said thank you for that. Thought I might get one more chance. What would you think of me now? So lucky, so strong, so proud. Never said thank you for that. Now I never had a chance. May angels lead you in. Here you meet my friends. On sleepless nights, the sleepless girl. May angels lead you in. So what would you think of me now? So lucky, so strong, so proud. Never said thank you for that. Now that I've had a chance, may angels lead you
progression of how this works, they start off with one thing. It might even be hacking into their computer, getting a text message that is sexual in nature, threatening to tell the parents, whatever it is. Then they go through this progression. So he stalks her for 2 years. She moves, he follows her. Extortion is extremely traumatizing for the people it's happening to. Shortly after she made this video, she committed suicide. She didn't know how to get out of it. The people in her life were not recognizing the signs. Now, what I will tell you, as the suicide rates are climbing with social media, so are the number of kids who are making an outcry on social media that they're to that point. But here's the deal with it. They are not really telling us as an adult. They're calling out more and more to their friends, trying to get a friend to notice what is happening to them by posting things like, I want to die, this kind of thing. The problem, again, kids' brains not fully developed. They don't understand the ramifications of final. They don't think their friend will really do it. They think their friend will get in trouble, so they don't tell anyone. So another point for education, right? Where we have to help our youth understand that if you see something like this online, you've got to report it to a trusted adult. But we also have to get really good at helping or noticing these kind of things that are telltale signs. So when you have a child that experiences something that we will talk through for the rest of the afternoon, whether it is extortion, or sex trafficking, cyberbullying, whatever it is. Amanda looked in that video very much in control, right? She looked like, hey, I just want to tell people what's going on so that other kids don't become a victim of this. But she was to that point of suicide. So we have got to get to the point where we recognize that they may be going through the motions like a robot, but all this stuff is going on internally. And I just want to say this to you as well. The go-to therapeutic modality for children who have been highly traumatized is something called trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. That therapy is a wonderful therapeutic modality at the right time. But it is focused on behavior modification, or how you respond to like memories that are triggering in your mind and stuff. So when we don't deal with that inner trauma that a child has lived, and those memories are just playing out in their mind over and over and over again, like that old Bill Murray Groundhog Day movie, and we are trying to tell them, you've got to change your response to those images playing out in your mind, it's never going to happen. They are going to run, they're going to commit suicide, all these things we're talking about. So we have to deal with that inner trauma that they've lived because of something like this, rather than just saying, hey, you've got to change the way you respond to it, because they cannot do it. They cannot do it for so many reasons. Okay, so first thing that I would tell you on sextortion is a lot of it happens through that webcam. So one thing that you want to do is you want to protect them from that. So you want to, like, I would not let my kids have their devices in their rooms because of this kind of stuff. If they do have them in there, make sure that webcam, the computer's turned off, FaceTime's turned off, maybe you put a Post-it note over it, whatever it is, you want that. And by the way, let me say, this is true for adults too. Sextortion happens to all kinds of different ages of people. So that's one thing. Also, like, I don't know if you've noticed that now on your iPhone, there's a little blinky thing up in the corner when your phone's recording, and it shouldn't be. So watch for that, or even if it should be. But you want to watch for that. If you hear strange noises, you can't figure out where it's coming from, could be someone hacking in to your computer or the phone. going back to Apple 13 or iPhone 13 coming out, you take your phone and you trade it in, and you know how they do that with data wipe when you trade it in? It doesn't really wipe your data away. What happens is it wipes away the directory. The right person gets your phone, and they know how to recover that, your photos, your data, all that. They've got material that they can try to use against you even for something like identity theft. There's only a couple of ways to really ensure that you get rid of everything that's on that phone. If you've got photos of your kids and stuff on there, you want to make sure you're getting rid of that information before you give it back. And then there are things like this. How to track a cell phone location without the person whose cell phone it is knowing you're doing it. We're having a really scary time for our children, right? But lay all that aside, we often unintentionally put our children in danger too, and I want to show you how.
Well, if you've got a smartphone and even once posted an online picture, you need to know about a new threat.
This is something new technology can allow hackers to track down your even for a simple email process. The technology allows strangers to cherry pick from online pictures posted all over the web and then find the home, work, or even school of that person in the pic.
Perfect, just like that, ready, 1, 2, 3. Good girl.
We gave NBC Action News staffer Suzanne McDonald and daughter Lainey a smartphone
And the big smile towards mommy face. Yeah.
to see just how threatening a seemingly innocent snapshot
Beautiful.
could be once loaded online. That's right. We then combed Twitter and sites like Facebook, Craigslist, and Photobucket, searching for locals. We found a menu of nearby children, and with the click of a mouse, their locations.
That is legitimately terrifying.
It's a new and frightening threat to parents. So we right-click, then we get that data file. The full threat is even an unknown to many internet crime experts. Have you ever seen this far before? No. Officer Mark Chutney calls the hidden threat today's biggest risk online. It's probably gonna be number one for a while. That's where she puts in pictures. It's incredible. Remember, lady, we used the technique to map her bedroom.
Scary, like terrifying.
We found not only Lady's home, but located her daycare, favorite fast food shop, and right down to the specific part of the park where she plays.
Especially as a parent, because the fact that you can see the exact place of it.
And UMKC computer science professor Deep Medic says smartphones leave a high-tech invisible trail using the same geo-tracking technology that enables the social network Foursquare and handheld map apps.
Exactly like in your GPS device in the car, the way you do it, it can tell you exactly where it is.
Medic shows how free, easily obtained browser add-ons can translate that data into maps.
Exactly, that's where the picture was taken.
The site ICanStalkYou.com reposts pics from unwitting Twitter users in real time, translating their photos into actual addresses and maps. The site also has a how-to on deactivating geotagging on the iPhone, BlackBerry, Google Android, and phone.
You want to be able to do almost on a picture basis.
With this online bedroom pic, we were able to find the home of these Olena brothers.
Hi, I'm Rose Patasi, I'm an NBC Action News.
Their startled mom didn't want to talk on camera.
No, thank you.
Off camera, we warned her, and she changed their online settings to private. Until then, the location of her kid's bedroom, their hangout, and their school were all available to anyone online.
Basically, what you do is you tell the bad guy where I live, where I create my likes, my dislikes, my mom or dad look like, where I live. I mean, the online mapping is phenomenal.
The big smile. Good girl.
Experts say you can still be perfectly safe just by turning on GPS setting on pics you plan to post online.
Perfect.
Okay, so first of all, what is the name of that website? ICanStalkYou.com. Did you know there were such a thing? Okay, so here's the deal, two deals. Remember earlier I told you to watch for extensions or plugins that your kids are going out and attaching to, like Safari or whatever it is. This is one of them, okay? And so people with not good intentions are doing things like this. Second of all, when you take a photo and your GPS locator is turned on, what this is saying is that data is embedded into media and pull them down and place them in websites like this and automatically translate them into the exact room we're setting in. So if you're taking photos of your kids or grandkids and posting them on social media and your GPS locator is turned on, this is a risk for you. Plus also, you know, we're going to the ball game tonight and someone gets your location through a photo of your home, they can go break into your home, take your stuff because they know you're at the ball game, right? So everyone get out your phone. I'm going to show you how to turn this off. And I'm going to show you on the iPhone, if you have an Android, it's similar. Okay, so first of all, go into settings. And then go down to privacy. And once you get into privacy, once you click that, it says location services, and then it says on, right? And my phone, my smartphone, not very smart today, failed me on Starbucks. So you want to leave some stuff on, right? Like how to find Starbucks, how to get to where you're going, online banking, all that. But what you want to turn off, if you scroll down to photos, scroll down to camera, and I would recommend that you also turn off any location services to your social media. Different ways you can come in, right?
On the Android, Google location history.
Probably. Let me look at it when we get done.
Okay.
Okay, so y'all have it?
What does it mean when it says like problems?
So like for instance, if you don't want to leave your online banking on all the time, then when you get ready to deposit a check or something, you can go turn it on. So it'll work when you're using that app. And by the way, the other thing I would tell you that I don't cover in this is I would turn off AirDrop on your iPhone when you're not using it as well, because there have been very dangerous things that have happened where people have AirDropped someone else's phone and gotten all of their contact information, all that as well. All right, so I'm gonna like pick up our pace if I want to get this all in for you. If anyone's having trouble with that, you can see me afterwards and I'll help you, although I'm not very good with Android on this stuff. Okay, so let's talk about sexting, because sexting is an epidemic in our country. So let me just tell you that our kids, again, remember the beginning, that's just what we do. They think it is a safe form of sex, it's just showing affection, all that. So 60% of youth in one study said, yeah, I do that. But then they also said 90% of my friends do it. So that kind of tells you something, right? The numbers are probably higher of kids actually doing it. Many teenagers do it because they feel pressure, like the boyfriend's pressuring the girlfriend, that kind of thing. There is a concerning rate of non-consensual sexting going on. So girlfriend sends it to boyfriend, boyfriend blasts it out over the school, that kind of thing, right? In fact, 1 in 3 teenagers have seen non-consensual material or photos. Almost 20% say that they pass it on. And this is another alarming thing. And I will tell you, the victim blaming that social media enables is really, really alarming. The 60% of youth say, hey, if their photo gets passed on, it's kind of their fault, right? Even if they didn't send that photo and someone else got it, like hacking into their webcam or whatever. So sexting leads to sexual predators, sexual bullying, shaming, social isolation. I really needed that Starbucks shop. I really needed it. All right. This kind of story you can see on like a weekly basis, where there are actually rings in the school of someone blasting it forward or all those kind of different things. Sexting is actually the 6th leading public health concern. I actually haven't been able to find since the pandemic broke out if that is still true, but pre-pandemic that was true. And here's the reason, because just like everything else we've been talking about today, it leads to extreme psychological and emotional issues like falling into drug abuse or alcohol, pornography addiction, all those different kinds of things. And then also all the legal things that come along with it, right down to suicide, for a lot of reasons that we talked about earlier. But here's an example: a boy, someone sent his, passed those on non-consensually. He was outed and he committed suicide because of it. What a lot of youth do not realize, and what a lot of parents do not realize, it actually can carry legal consequences as well. They can be charged with child pornography or dissemination of child pornography. At the federal level, it carries, and did you see that even if they do not request it, they can get charged with it. At the federal level, it can carry up to 10 years, the 10-year sentence for the child. If they decided to prosecute for it, they have to register as a sex offender, and this has become such an epidemic that the penalties are getting higher. Parents can be charged as well. In California, they can be charged as an adult. They can get up to 8 years in prison and fines of up to $100,000. And that's where, after I did the youth version of this, a lot of the boys were texting me at night. I didn't know, what do I do? How do I protect myself, right? All right, any questions on sextortion or sexting before we talk about child sex trafficking?
So,
The kids or the parents, either way.
and, but when we
So that's what I mean when it says even if they didn't request the photo and they keep it on their phone, they won't get charged. Now, it's going to depend on the DA and a lot of other things, right? But I do know this is kind of up to you because it's such a secret thing. All right, any other questions on those? Right, say that one more time. Oh, like if you know about it? Oh, wow. I don't, like if it were a foster youth, I probably would, but like otherwise, I probably would not. But if they don't go to school and let the school know what's happening, because it could be a bigger issue when you school, that kind of thing. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes, like if you find something like that on your child's phone, how to find out if it's gone bigger than that. All right, any other questions? Talk about child sex trafficking, which is another epidemic. The research study by a university in Texas found that 55% of youth in this current, in the last few years who have become a victim of this actually became a victim online, either through social media or through the internet. Now, I kind of referenced this earlier. This is the case I told you about in Fresno, where he did the catfishing thing, the small ring of men, but there was one leader, where he stole the young woman's information, set up the profile. He would send out friend requests to these young girls around 14 and, build a relationship, posing as this young woman. You can go to Vegas where they do all these fun things. Well, then once he convinced them to send her a nude photo, then he would force them into coming to meet him. And he would tell them, you tell your parents you're going to play Pokemon Go or something similar. So your 14-year-old walks out of the door a virgin and comes back in that night, a victim of child sex trafficking. You have no idea this is even happening. Because again, they're afraid to tell. And research is really, really high on how many teenagers are afraid to tell, or else they don't tell because they just have so normalized it that then they'll turn around and say in these research studies, I want an adult to talk to me about these things, all these kind of things we're talking about. And the most trusted source, they say, their parents. Right? So let me give you an example of how child sex trafficking works online.
So how do traffickers find their victims? Where's the #1 place a trafficker hangs out? A lot of them hide behind their computer screen or their phone. At any second, there are 750,000 predators or more hanging out on the internet and social media. For example, a 14-year-old posted on her social media about a fight with her mom. 19-year-old girl she didn't know sent her a private message and asked her what was up with her mom. Should she answer?
So this is actually a video clip we do with youth and the trafficker. And after we play that, then we talk to them about, what could happen, how could they stay safe, all that. And then we show them this one.
Sadly, she chose to answer. She didn't realize the person on the other side of the app just wanted to make money on her. The 19-year-old kept telling the younger girl how wrong her mom was treating her and convinced her to give her her address. She told her she would take her for a smoothie or something to teach her how to get her mom under control. When the 19-year-old girl pulled up at the unsuspecting girl's house, a guy was sitting in the back seat. The 14-year-old girl didn't think anything about it and got into the car with them. She was sold in 6 states in 30 days. What was her first decision that started pulling her into the trap they had laid for her?
I tell you, in this case, it really was a 19-year-old girl. The 14-year-old has a fight with her single mom. She goes online, she posts about it. The 19-year-old girl sends her a private message. Hey, what's up with your mom? Why is she treating you that way? And if we did a full child sex trafficking thing or another predator thing, we would see that empathizing against the parents, huge way that they get our kids under their control, in their trap. And so, think about this case though, the 19-year-old girl had actually been a victim of a trafficker since she was 12 years old, and that trafficker was forcing her to do that. So while she's talking to this 14-year-old, he has them in the car, they're about an hour away, and they're already driving to where that teenager lives. Now, remember what I told you at the very beginning, on average, they can get that child to agree to meet them within 18 minutes. So you see how quickly it can happen just by treating them like that. All right, now this is Derek, the former trafficker that I work with, and I put this photo up there because both evidence-based research and Derek will tell you this about a child sex trafficker. They don't really have to trick that kid. They don't even really have to prove them. They can find out in no time at all exactly what it is that that child is looking for and become that for that child. So whether it's a boyfriend, a father figure, whatever it is, because they're so good at psychological warfare, pulling them into their web, talking them into meeting them, all those kind of things. And so really, they do not see them as a predator. They see them as something like a protector or a romantic interest or something like that. Lisa, I would like to talk about the traffic, right? Right, so like I did a whole boot camp 101 full day thing on child sex trafficking, so that was like a little bit snapshot. Any questions on that before we talk about pornography? Any questions? Going really fast, I want to get pornography and cyberbullying in before we wrap up. All right, so I will tell you that with pornography, the United States of America is the #1 country for producing and consuming not only pornography, but hardcore pornography, and the things like we were talking about earlier, fetishes, bondage pornography, all that. Searches for teen pornography have just escalated and exploded in the last years, with more than 500,000 searches every single day, people looking for teenagers being exploited in pornography. And now it's to the point where they don't even have to go search for it. They go on something like OnlyFans and pay a kid to do it for them. Not even a teenager anymore, 7, 8, 9 years old. Also, bestiality has really exploded in pornography as well, with almost 3 million returns if you do a Google search for that. And I will tell you that our kids who are victims of child sex trafficking are having to recreate things like this for the violence, right? It's very, very common in pornography these days. And I'll also tell you that we have got to stay on top of emerging technology. So, and there are so many things we could talk about with that, but I'll just tell you for today, already there are available, you can order child sex robots. So not dolls, but robots that you can program with a rape gun. The more people buy those kind of things, the more it's going to drive their lust for our real children. Right? So teens have become addicted to pornography because of everything we're talking about today, like those feeds that automatically send it to you. Teenagers, the largest consumer, and not even teenagers, 12 to 17, largest consumers of online pornography. 64% of youth 13 to 24 years old actively seek out porn at least weekly. 44% of tweens say that they have watched something online that their parents don't know about or would not approve of. Every single day in the United States of America, 7 to 14-year-olds watch 47 million porn videos. Another epidemic, or we might call that one a pandemic as well. Nearly 60% of youth say that they saw pornography for the first time at home. The majority of the rest of them say they saw it for the first time at a friend's house. And a lot of times it's like an innocent search for something where it pops up in that feed, and then they're curiously follow it through. Before they know it, they're addicted to it because it is extremely addicting, and people do not realize that. Right, so this gets to where I was telling you earlier, and I can show you these kind of numbers in anything that we're talking about today. 74% or 75% of teenagers say that their parents never discuss internet pornography with them, and then 87% say no one discusses pornography with them. 54% say they can't even think of anyone who would talk to them about online pornography. It has gotten to the point where that generation says that littering is worse than looking at pornography. They don't understand all the different things that can do to them, including acting out upon it. Now, one of the reasons we have such a pandemic of child sex trafficking as well is because of pornography. It is as addicting as a drug. The longer you watch it, look at it, the more you have to start looking at more graphic things. Same question about in the beginning, like going from marijuana to cocaine, right? And then you have to start acting out on it. The older a child gets, the more likely that becomes. So at 11 to 12, 21% are likely to act out on what they're seeing, including the hardcore bondage type stuff. 39% for 13 to 14-year-olds, and then 42% for 15 to 16-year-olds. There are cases where children have actually been registered as a sex offender, never even kissed a girl because child pornography against the law, right? Now, here's where I really get kids' attention. When I show them these brains, yellow brain, healthy brain. Brain in the middle, a brain addicted to heroin. Brain on that side, a brain addicted to pornography. Actually does more damage structurally to your brain than heroin. That opens their eyes, gets them listening to you, and also scares them. And this is a drawing a child did for me, actually pretty close to your county, who had been forced into bondage, sex, and videos because she developed a pornography addiction as a self-coping mechanism for trauma, and she never got counseling for that. She never got the right kind of care. So I will tell you, when we don't give them trauma therapy that deals with that inner trauma, they turn to negative things like pornography. She was sitting in the juvenile hall not too far away from here with dislocated bones that no one even knew about because two homeless men would give her meth and would tell her, "We'll make all your fantasies come true," because of her pornography addiction. It's a lot of things, right? And just a lot things happening to our kids because of the addiction to pornography as well. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because of time, and this is in the handouts back there. But if you think your child is addicted to pornography, these are some things to look for as far as their device. And then here are some things to look for as far as their psychological and emotional state. When we talk about cyberbullying in just a moment, it is exactly the opposite. And you will get a handout on both of those things, what to look for, what to do, okay? But exactly the opposite. There is an app called Brain Buddy, and Brain Buddy will actually rewire your brain back the other direction from an addiction to pornography. Now, let me stress for you, for a teenager, don't just depend on an app. They need professional therapy for that. Right, anything else before we talk about cyberbullying? I want to give you a few more tips of what to do, and we will be done. Any questions? All right, here we go, cyberbullying, online violence. Most of us probably know that. Before the pandemic, cyberbullying was the #1 issue cited across the country. The teachers said that they had to face in the school. Yet only about 8% of schools were actually, had all the resources that they needed to be able to deal with bullying. Another epidemic, like everything we're talking about is an epidemic, right? 65% of children 8 to 14 have been involved in some kind of cyberbullying incident. I want to bring that to life for you a little bit. If we were to take all the children who have been bullied and set them down in one state, it would equal the population of Georgia. A lot of kids who have been bullied, right? Yet, only 1 in 10 children report being a victim of bullying. Instead, they spiral into those negative things that we've been talking about. If they're a victim of cyberbullying, the chances are really high that they also are a victim at school. Girls more likely to be bullied than boys. They're a bigger target for that. And here's a big dynamic with this one. Just like with child sex trafficking, the odds of the victim of a bully becoming a victimizer are very, very high. And one of the things it does, it gives them back that sense of power and control that has been taken away from them. It is extremely important to get both a victim and a victimizer the psychological help, the emotional help that they need, because it can lead to all the things we've been talking about. 80% of teens, this is a great stat, right? 80% of teens say they have defended someone who's being bullied online, but at the same time, 90% of teens have ignored it. So my guess on that is, this is my friend, I'm going to defend them. This is someone I don't know, or they deserve it, or they set themselves up for it, that kind of thing. And then 21% say they've actually joined in when they see something happening to someone online. Did any of you see, I think this was like 2 weeks ago, and these were adults, that a woman was riding on a train, I think it was in Philadelphia, and someone raped her on that train, and other people were sitting there and did nothing. And someone even videoed it. Did not help her. So we're like social media addiction, and we're to the point with this addiction, like our kids are egging people on to kill themselves online, or to bully people, or they're joining in, when in real world they wouldn't do that, but in this virtual world that they can't make that distinction between, they jump into these kind of things. It's like shocking, right? And it is so widespread that why are we shocked, right? All right, so I want to show you a few different ways that bullying happens. So one creating, it's kind of like catfishing, where you create this fake account, you pretend to be them, and then you post those embarrassing photos, videos, whatever. Flaming is typically directly to that person, either in text messaging, where you're just bombarding them with profanity, just keeping on and on and on. This little boy was 13 years old when he kept getting those kind of abusive messages. He tried to commit suicide, wasn't successful, and laid in a hospital bed for a year before he finally died. Cyber stalking is kind of like stalking in real life, where it's those threatening messages meant to intimidate. Another form of it is when they send out false information about someone to damage their reputation. Or, let's go back to this one, because this one is big. This is where they're trying to bait them, get them to respond so that they can almost make it look like it's their fault, but make the thing grow bigger and bigger. And then on this one, what I would want you to understand here, this doesn't necessarily have to do with sexual orientation. This is just outing some kind of embarrassing information about them and shaming them, humiliating them, causing them embarrassment. So again, I have a handout for you. It tells you what to look for, both with devices and with their like emotional state, mental state, that kind of thing, and what to do, including what to do with the bully. Bully is always looking for attention, and you want to make sure that you do not give that to them. But one thing that you do want to do for sure is you want to grab the screenshots, get any kind of information you can. That's the meeting now, so sorry. That you can pass on to law enforcement, okay? Because if you don't grab that screenshot, it could disappear from there, and then you don't have that evidence. All right, so let's wrap up by letting me. I'm trying to talk so fast to get it all in, and I'm talking all over myself. Let me give you a few last safety things that you can do to keep your youth safe online, all right? So first of all, watch for change in their behavior. You have a happy child, like just a regular child going through life, and all of a sudden their demeanor changes, but that means they could be experiencing one of these things that we talked about. You want to let them know that you believe them. Do not blame them. Do not overreact. Do not yell at them. It's not the time, because they are in that psychological, emotional state that we've been talking about all day. So you want to let them know you're sorry that it happened to them, even if they initiated it by sending something like this. Get the situation dealt with, and then deal with that other part of it. Let them know you're always available to them. I don't care if it's the middle of the night, you need me, you come wake me up, and we'll talk this thing through, right? And then that helps prevent things like I'm being taught. There's this fine balance here where you want to always be available, but also give them some space to be able to work through kind of like a grieving process, right? Cannot stress to you enough that they have got to have professional counseling with any one of these things that we're talking about. I've worked with youth who have been counselors for 7 years, do not have one positive coping mechanism, and then they spiral into these negative ones. So I have a worksheet, Leonie, I think I sent it to you, like on what trauma's like and then how to cope. So she's going to get that to all of you as well. If you have a traumatized youth, work through some of these positive coping mechanisms with them. Find the one that they're comfortable with, and then just help them learn how to make that a habit. Like anytime you start triggering, go to this. When I do the trucks on the truck with you, I walk them through them, I make them do them with me, I make it fun, I make it dumb, and then they remember what we're talking about, right? So a couple more things right here. If your child becomes a victim of like their photo being posted somewhere, or you find sexting on their phone, something like that, there is a way to find out if it is more widespread out there. And you can do that through Google Images. So what you would want to do is go to Google Images, and then you see that camera search box. If you click on that camera, it's going to bring this here. So say you found that sexting photo, you can upload it, and then if it's out there on social media or anywhere else, it's going to come up, and you can figure out how widespread the thing you're doing.
What if I make this?
No, because you're uploading. No, this is just uploading it on your computer. So you're just searching to see if.
So you put it in this, that you had uploaded to.
I don't think so. That's not how this works. But just to be safe, just delete it after you search. But it's going to bring up anything that's out there for you. Right, cannot stress this to you enough. I've said it multiple times today. Talk about it a lot, start when they're young, keep the conversation going. When they sign up for new apps, find out what it is, all those kind of things. Kids are looking for authenticity, and when we kind of were real with them, they will listen to you. I had a boy last week, he came up to me at least 5 times afterwards, and he wanted to know the brain science behind pornography and why he could have sex with someone and that wouldn't do that to his brain, but why pornography would. They want people who will be real with them and give them answers and help them understand and not just tell them don't do these things because of one thing, but here's the reason. I want to stress this one more time. Don't overreact because you lose them the minute you do that, right? And then it's the big one. Can you show them you know how to unplug without it looking like a struggle, right? Without it being too hard to turn off your own TikTok, that kind of thing. Teach them how to think critically, help them make those, my mind just went like, if I do this kind of thing is going to happen, the consequences. One time I was doing the traps of a trafficker in the juvenile detention center, and a boy, I was speaking only to boys, he had talked his best friend into letting him sell her and then splitting the money because she was having sex with people anyway. Right before he goes into juvenile hall, she posted that she wanted to kill herself. He could not think through the cause and effect consequences of selling his friend, that when he heard me talk about it, then the light bulbs go off. We have to help them learn how to think through these things critically and logically. Right, and I said multiple times, start young, consider not giving them devices young, because that is just setting them up for all these things. All right, so any questions before we wrap up? A lot of information to process, right? So one thing you can do, I've got my card up here. Sometimes you have to process and then you have questions, or you have a hard time with the information. You take my card, do later to like process or ask the question or whatever. Feel free to contact me. But I would just tell you again, know what your kids know. Go out there and do research. Be prepared. Right? Any other questions? All right, thank you, everyone. I can't believe we got in there with 2 minutes to spare. And my battery's not working all the way.
And another available for Jonas before.
see the Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.